Tributes are paid to 73-year-old Jeff Kitchen, who...
MP Craig McKinley almost died after contracting sepsis. Today, he returns to Parliament, having had both his hands and feet amputated.
Good morning. We've got some heavy and persistent rain moving northwards and westwards.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, the 22nd of May, and the former Chief Executive of the Post Office, Paula Vennells, will begin giving evidence at the public inquiry into the Horizon IT scandal later today.
Between 1999 and 2015, hundreds of sub-postmasters were wrongly prosecuted because of faulty software. It is the first time she will speak publicly about her role in the scandal for nearly a decade. Our business correspondent Emma Simpson has the details.
Customers just asked me about posties.
It's 2012 and Paula Vennells is in her first year as the new boss of the Post Office. She's already spent half a decade with the business. And here she's on a visit to the shop floor.
Retail is detail. I don't know whoever it was that said that, but it is that. And you come to places like this and you find out the little things that make the operation much more efficient.
Back then, the Post Office was hemorrhaging money. The pressure is on to turn things around. But did she put profits before people? There's a sack full of questions waiting for her now. Lee bought the Bridlington branch in 2003. The losses soon began. Here he is after the Post Office made him bankrupt with huge legal costs as they pursued him in court.
So important for me personally that I understand.
20 years on, he just wants some answers.
I'm not looking for her to be crucified or anything like that. I'm just looking for the truth, why, who, what, when. I just need to understand, just to help me in my journey.
Politicians had plenty of dealings with Paula Vennells too.
I don't expect there to be many gotcha moments because her solicitors are very good.
Lord Arbuthnot played a key role, putting pressure on the Post Office to come clean. The inquiry's likely to ask about this appearance before MPs when she defended the faulty Horizon IT system.
If there had been any miscarriages of justice, it would have been really important to me in the Post Office that we actually surface those. And as the investigations have gone through, so far we've had no evidence of that.
She must have known of the Clark advice, which referred to one Fujitsu witness who had misled the court and who has now been referred to the Metropolitan Police in view of some of the evidence that he gave. And how did she square what she said in 2015 with what the barrister had told her and the rest of the Post Office in 2013?
In Guildford, a theatre fills up with people who've come to hear more about the scandal. They're here to listen to the journalist who has spent years helping expose the truth. For him, leadership, or lack of it, is key.
If your business prosecutes people, prosecuting people is the most important part of your business, and you need to be all over it, and I don't think she was. She relied on Post Office loyalists and highly paid legal advisors to tell her the truth she wanted to hear. And I think now it's time that we heard the actual truth from her.
The stage now set for the biggest moment in the public inquiry. Paula Vennells' solicitors say she's focused on cooperating with it, breaking her silence for the first time in almost a decade. Emma Simpson, BBC News.
It's going to be a big day, isn't it? And Ben is in central London for us this morning, ahead of Paula Vennells giving evidence. Morning, Ben. What do you think we can expect to happen then in the hours ahead?
Well, it's a hugely significant day because this is the first time that Paula Vennells will have spoken publicly about what happened in almost a decade. She'll face questioning over the next 3 days, starting from this morning. As we heard from Emma's report there, Ms Vennells was in charge of the Post Office as Chief Executive from 2012 to 2019. During that time, wrongful prosecutions continued against innocent sub-postmasters. During that time, evidence was growing, was starting to emerge that the Horizon IT system provided by Fujitsu was faulty. And during that period, in 2019, the High Court ruled that there were problems with the accounting system. So here are some of the key questions that Paula Vennells may well face. When did she know that those accounts could be accessed remotely and changed without the knowledge of sub-postmasters? Did she tell the truth to Parliament in 2015 when she told MPs on the Business Select Committee she'd seen no evidence of miscarriages of justice? As chief executive of the organisation, why didn't she do more to find out what was going on? And why did she allow the Post Office to fight the sub-postmasters in court at a cost of £100 million defending that legal challenge that was brought against the organisation? And crucially, what conversations went on behind closed doors? Because the Post Office is owned by the government and we don't know what conversations, what information was shared by ministers and Post Office bosses. All of those questions and many more likely to be put to her in the coming days.
Ben, for now, thank you very much indeed. We're expecting Paula Vennells to turn up at the inquiry while we're on air this morning. So we'll go back to Ben throughout the programme and, of course, full coverage of everything she says across BBC News over the next couple of days.
It's going to be a busy programme this morning because in around an hour from now, we're going to find out the latest inflation figures. Nina is keeping an eye on this for us. What can we expect?
In the last couple of minutes, Paula Vennells, a name you'll recognise, the former chief executive of the Post Office. Here she is, just arriving at the inquiry into the Horizon IT scandal.
Just to remind you that Ms Vennells was actually chief executive of the Post Office between 2012 and 2019. You can see the intense interest in her as she arrives. This is the first time she will have spoken about this publicly in around a decade. And during the time that she was in charge, sub-postmasters were still being prosecuted, but the Post Office continued to deny that the Horizon software was faulty, despite mounting evidence.
Just saw somebody with their arm around her, protecting her, surrounded by a police escort as well. Dozens of photographers, journalists throwing questions, but the real questioning will begin under oath at the inquiry this morning, the first of 3 days of Paula Vennells giving evidence. Full coverage of that really important moment in the Post Office scandal across BBC News over the next 3 days.
Now, today is the 7th anniversary of the Manchester Arena attack, which killed 22 people.
And to mark just arriving at the inquiry into the Horizon IT scandal.
Just to remind you that Ms Vennells was actually chief executive of the Post Office between 2012 and 2019. You can see the intense interest in her as she arrives. This is the first time she will have spoken about this publicly in around a decade. And during the time that she was in charge, sub-postmasters were still being prosecuted, but the Post Office continued to deny that the Horizon software was faulty, despite mounting evidence.
Just saw somebody with their arm around her, protecting her, surrounded by a police escort as well. Dozens of photographers, journalists throwing questions, but the real questioning will begin under oath at the inquiry this morning, the first of 3 days of Paula Vennells giving evidence. Full coverage of that really important moment in the Post Office scandal across BBC News over the next 3 days.